All right, so we're going to talk about the Gnostics. Um, now, to begin with the Gnostics, let us begin with one of their teachings. And one of the teachings of the Gnostics is that the world is evil. Um, Now we can directly contrast this thought of the world being evil with Moses declaring that the world was created by God and therefore, the world is good. You know, Moses declares the world to be good. So we can conclude that Moses is an opponent of Gnosticism. Because these two thoughts, are contradictory and clashing. So you can't be a Gnostic and a follower of Moses. But, what is this idea of the world being evil, right? And, I mean, simply speaking, what it is it's an attempt to create an atmosphere of guilt, right? I mean, if you look at interpersonal relations, you could have parents that create an atmosphere of guilt in order to control the will of their child. It's about, you can use guilt as a way to control another's will. And again, this is also directly spoken to in Moses, right? Because Moses talks a lot about innocence, right? So the world is good and we are innocent. Unless you have a heart of stone, then you're not innocent. But I mean that would be true guilt, right? Because with Moses, it's all about the heart, to be loving and brave and wise. That's what Moses wanted to be, right? And if you're innocent, you can free yourself from that stifling guilt, right? And so, essentially, Gnosticism is a political tool for population control. Not like I'm not using population control in a eugenic sense, but to control the population, right? And that's essentially what it is. It's to create this atmosphere where the people are like feeling guilty and guilty and guilty. Like it always fascinated me that America is a puritanical place until I realized these thoughts. Because the founding fathers, I don't even think they were Christian. They were like deists or whatever, and Puritanism, had its place in early America, but it wasn't the dominant force. But Puritanism's everywhere. It's weird. You look at like the liberals today, and the liberals talk on both sides of their mouth because on the one hand they're like, yeah, traditional morality is stifling and it's tyrannical, and free yourselves and la la la. But then when it comes to like sex laws, they're extremely puritanical, and some of their ideas are very puritanical. Like, if a woman wants to have sex, that's great, but if a man wants to have sex, then he's an evil monster, right? So it's this creation of this atmosphere of guilt. And so Puritanism is a control mechanism in the same way that Gnosticism is a control mechanism on the masses. It creates this atmosphere of guilt. And, Moses didn't want the Jews to live in this atmosphere of guilt. He wanted them to be free. But there's a fascinating aspect to Gnosticism, and that is the following. It's like Gnosticism is not really a theology, and it's kind of not even a philosophy, but it's more of a philosophy. Definitely, and there are tenets to it, like the world is evil, create that guilt. There's some aspects to Gnosticism that are going to be the same. But, I mean, you can see Gnosticism in Christianity. You can see Gnosticism, I'm guessing you can probably see it in Islam. You can see it in different pagan religions if you read the ancient books. And there were different religions out there, not just one paganism or whatever. But you can see Gnosticism. So Gnosticism is almost like this imposter philosophy. And they infiltrate other groups, and then they transform that group into being Gnostic. Right? It's, it's a philosophy of duplicity, right? Which would make sense because it's very tyrannical, and of course, I think most Gnostics are what communists would call useful idiots, but in the upper echelons, in the inner circles, because I mean it's a secrecy, right? It's an elitist thing. That's another thing that's common. In Gnostic circles, but at the upper echelons, it's going to be very malicious and tyrannical and controlling. But yeah, no, it's like an imposter philosophy, I mean, a modern comparison would be the communism, right? Like every time communists take charge, they don't enact Marx, and then there's some places in the world where there aren't any communists in sight, and yet the tenets of Marx are being enacted around them. And so, I mean, like, I've had people tell me, communism's never worked, and no, it has. It works for the communists. It doesn't work for the people, but it works for the communists. And so it's been very successful in that aspect, and continues to be so. Because, I mean, do you really think, the Soviet regime, one of the most genocidal regimes towards its own people and towards other peoples in world history, do you think they fell because of bankruptcy? They don't believe in Marx. They believe in power. And not the good kind of power either, because the good kind of power is self-control and self-actualization. But this would be another example of an imposter philosophy, right? And that's definitely what Gnosticism is. It's like you find it everywhere, and you have all these different Gnostic groups that pop up everywhere, throughout history. And whether there's a Gnostic conspiracy, that's like, in other words, these Gnostics, they never died out. They may have lost and lost and lost, but they passed it on orally to their descendants. Or it's just a philosophy that tyrants are attracted to, right? But it continues to pop up throughout history, and it's always popping up with a different face on. It's like, hey, I'm a Gnostic, but I'm also, I believe in the Greek gods, right? Or, hey, I'm a Gnostic, and, I believe in the Egyptian gods. Or, hey, I'm a Gnostic, and I'm a Christian. Or, hey, I'm a Gnostic, or I'm this or that. And it's like, they're always popping up with different faces on. But it's the same anti-Mosaic philosophy at work and at play.